Welcome to this webinar talk that we are now hosting at the Center for Policy Research. As you can see from your screen, this is a talk about a very important sector, not just for Japan, but also very much so for India. And of course, as all of you know, there's a deep connection between the Japanese investment and the Indian automobile industry. So today we will be looking at vertical integration in the Japanese automobile industry using a new perspective, which is the product complexity perspective, which builds on work like people like Ricardo Hausmann, which look at economic complexity across in trade across countries. But our speakers will be sort of explaining that in more detail as the talk progresses. We're delighted to welcome Professor Kawakami from the Department of Public Management at Kendai University, and Dr. Eri Yamada from Nagoya City University, who have been working on this issue for a fairly long time. And I'm especially delighted to welcome my old colleague and now professor at Melbourne, Piyush Tiwari, who is a co-author on this paper with Professor Kawakami and Dr. Yamada. Thank you so much for joining us. This session will be chaired by Dr. Anup Vadhavan, who is the former Commerce Secretary, Government of India, and therefore especially well placed to contextualize this particular talk. And we'll begin with initial discussion comments from Dr. Rana Hassan, who is currently the Regional Economic Advisor of the South Asia Department of the Asian Development Bank, and also somebody who's worked a lot in both labor and trade, and therefore somebody who brings a deep perspective to this particular issue. With those words, let me hand over to Dr. Vadhavan for the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you, Paco. And needless to say, delighted to be here at this very interesting and promising session. I'm sure it will be most illuminating, deal with a very relevant issue of industry structure and its impact on key outcomes and their transition dynamic over time. As I think Paco mentioned, this emanates from received wisdom that at the macro level, the characteristics of industry structure shape outcomes like diversification, growth, innovation, inequality, etc. And the fact that there is an interactive dynamic between the industry structure and these outcomes, which shapes their evolution in an interdependent manner over time. And to that extent, I think the paper treats key variables as endogenous, and that's an interesting, rather than taking the sort of outcomes as, or the determinants as given, it treats, in a sense, both the determinants and the outcomes in an interactive endogenous manner. And of course, the paper looks at the micro aspect, industry level aspect of these macro relationships, which have been written about in the literature. And it validates, these relationships at the micro and industry level, in particular for the Japanese auto components industry. And it finds some, fractal relationships in terms of certain symmetries and certain regularities in these relationships. And in particular, as I think Paco also mentioned, the paper relates the within industry productive structure reflected in aspects like asset specificity, within product category complexity, and the associated networks and relationships, and relates them to the underlying processes of structural change, which, as the paper mentions, is driven by the driving force of capability accumulation over time. And it explains how key outcomes, like new products, increasing sophistication, increasing technical attributes of the products is determined and shaped over time by this sort of ecosystem that it deals with. And the paper takes forward, growth literature by adding a new qualitative dimension to typical, quantitative determinants of growth. Of course, there are many qualitative determinants of growth also in the literature, including, human resources and aspects like that. But this adds another element to those qualitative aspects and endogenously incorporates them into the model. And I think very relevant for countries like India, where we often look at quantitative aspects, talk about India being the 5th largest and heading to be the 4th largest, 3rd largest, which neglects the qualitative side. We, in a sense, miss the qualitative aspects, which have welfare implications, which have implications in terms of per capita welfare also. We ignore those. And to that extent, I think the paper can add some illumination on how India can look at those qualitative aspects also. It, of course, introduces an interactive dynamic between industry structure and capability accumulation and other outcomes, instead of, as I mentioned earlier, treating, industry and product structure as fixed or aggregated. And in particular, while looking at the Japanese auto component industry, it looks at the differential experience of Toyota, Nissan, and Honda. And I think we'll wait for the authors to describe how they reach those conclusions about the differential experience of particular industries. And of course, it also looks at the changing nature of, or has some lessons for the changing nature of comparative advantage from long-term integrated relationships. I think Japanese industry is characterized by these long-term integrated relationships, and often accused of overlooking, cost minimization for that relationship of trust. So it shows how that has changed over time. And of course, Japan is famous also for lifelong employment and some of these long traditional relationships. So there are some, I think, learnings on that aspect also, which we look forward to hearing. And so finally, in terms of, policy implications for people like us in India, hopefully the authors will be able to shed some light on what is the kind of industry structure we need to target through suitable incentives, suitable policies. How do you make that industry structure come about? How does an economy graduate, from the assembly of products at a rudimentary level to actual manufacture of components, achievement of higher value addition domestically, and ultimately to a self-sustained growth path based on R&D and based on countries having their own brands. For instance, you look at China starting off with assembly, going on to components, and eventually, having their own sort of world-beating brands. So how does India, for instance, transform? In this context, we have the product-linked incentives brought in by the government recently. At the moment, essentially, it is incentivizing assembly with minimal value addition, especially in electronics and sophisticated fields like that. So how do we design PLI for that assembly work to transform to high value addition economic activity with components in way? So I hope the author will be able to shed some light on all this and we learn from it. So let me not say more of this time and come between the, I'm sure, the very interested audience and the speaker. So I would welcome the presentation.
Thank you very much. And I very appreciate very detailed introduction based on our another papers. So
I hope I've been accurate in.
yeah, and I appreciate that. I am Tezu Kawakami from Kinda University, Japan. So this is a joint research with Eddie and Piyush. The title of our research is Reexamining vertical integration in the Japanese automobile industry, product complexity perspective. So this is the outline, not our research presentation. 1, a motivation. 2, literature review. 3, a research agenda. 4, empirical data we are using, and stylized parts that can be derived from our data. And we want to explain the concept of product complexity, a key measure to quantify asset specificity. Then we using this variable, we study the organizational structure by econometric analysis. Finally, conclusion and discussion. So let's move to motivation. So the transaction cost economics, TCE literature, since Oliver Williamson, further go back into Ronald Coase, has argued that specialized asset used for production process determines the organizational structure of firms. So automakers, car makers produce by themselves, produce intermediate goods by themselves, or procure through market. So according to TCE perspective, the more assets become specific and generate coherence, the transaction costs, such as making detailed contracts or policing contract compliance or contesting a suit and so on, increases because inter-firm contracts become complex. Then the firms are more likely to observe vertical integration. Since the typical example of the vertical merger of GM is with Fisher Body, researchers have focused especially on the automobile industry as a very interesting subject to explore its organizational design.
Could we minimize that box so we can see the, we can just.
Yes.
This minimize.
The statement.
Yeah, we just minimize it. Thank you.
Gradually a little up so that.
Yeah, thank you.
So the reason why we focus on the automobile industry is twofold. The auto industry is deemed an appropriate research setting. The first reason is that the auto industry and related industries have played a key role in economies that export auto vehicles, including Japan. So, for example, this is the export share by industries. So, among the Japanese exports, in car industries occupy more than 20%. And further, some machinery, the products belonging to some machinery industries or electrical industries also very closely related to car makers. So for Japanese economies, the automobile industries are very important. I think the US and the European, for US and European countries, the automobile industry is very important. The second reason is that the automobile, the auto vehicle is a very complex product with components that must work together as a system. Since each component is part of a larger system, so mutual adjustment and coordination is required on the part of suppliers and automakers in order to produce a well-functioning vehicle. So interfirm specialization is likely to be important because suppliers and auto car makers are reciprocally interdependent. And further, previous research provides very little information about the qualitative changes. So we need to consider how about parts are how old parts are asset specific by years. So this is the 1980s automobile vehicles. Is totally different from the vehicles nowadays. So we have to identify the technological changes. So the big problem is how we can identify the technological progress quantitatively. So the literature review, especially focusing on the Japanese automobile industries. Once the well-known K2 relationship in the Japanese automobile industry was admired as a source of a competitive advantage compared to US and European car makers. So in the field of management science, especially in 1980s and 1990s, so researchers' attention has been directed to the distinctive Japanese interfirm relationships between automobile manufacturers and auto parts suppliers. So these so-called K-REITs networks is characterized by long-term purchasing relationships, intense collaboration, cross-shareholding, and frequent exchange of personnel and technology. So when customized component with low modularity are transacted, this long-standing tightly integrated relationships, rather than arm's length relationships through market, contributes to the accumulation of shared human and physical assets by flows. However, after Japanese economic recession in 1990, and the recent literature has argued that this long-standing period model had become outdated for a modern economy. So many car makers had shifted to competing for limited demand by increasing efficiency and lowering prices. So nowadays, K-REITs have been shifting to market mechanisms and open competition in response to the shift in global demand to price-conscious consumers, especially in emerging markets. This is the figure shows one of the evidence of the collapse of K-REITs structure. This squared mark shows the Nissan. So after 1999, this figure shows the procurement ratio from the K-REITs suppliers. So after 1999, the procurement from K-REITs suppliers for Nissan rapidly decreased. So 1999 is a symbol, the year which occurred a symbolic event. Renault and Nissan formed the Renault-Nissan Alliance, and Carlos Ghosn joined Nissan as its COO. So after that, Nissan's procurement from K-REIT suppliers rapidly decreased. This one is Mazda. Mazda also followed the Nissan's. So procurement ratio from K-REIT supplier decreased. Triangular is Honda. So 1990s, slightly Honda procurement ratio slightly increased. But after 1999, also for Honda, procurement ratio from Keiretsu tended to decrease. However, this one is Toyota. Toyota maintains the procurement from Keiretsu suppliers. Further, recently, Toyota increased procurement from Keiretsu suppliers. So, our question is that why has Toyota maintained the procurement from the Keiretsu suppliers, but the other car makers decrease the procurement from Keiretsu suppliers? This is a big question for us. So based on these motivations and the literature review, our research agenda is follows. Agenda is twofold. One, we examine the relationship between asset specificity to develop products and organizational governance structure in the Japanese automobile industry. Especially, we examine whether or not there are significant differences between Japanese firms, especially that we focus on Toyota, Nissan, and Honda. These are the three major car makers in Japan. The second contribution of our research is that we try to quantify asset specificity by product complexity index. That are the approach applying network science. Measuring asset specificity has it's very difficult, and most empirical studies have used subjective measures such as interviews from expertise or specialists. So measurement in somehow objective manner allows for the systematic exploration of the effects of asset specification and the degree of vertical integration. These are to our contribution of our research. So, empirical data we are using. So we use published survey data. The title of the data is present data analysis of domestic delivery matrix on main automobile ports. So this data documents annual domestic transactions between first-tier auto parts suppliers and car manufacturers for each automotive component. So this data, including the information on which supplier supplied what to which car manufacturers. So, for example, Denso and Aishin is the Toyota's Keiretsu suppliers. These are the mega suppliers. And these manufacture mainly engine body parts or electrical parts to Toyota. And Bridgestone is a tire maker. So Bridgestone delivered the tire products to most every car makers. So we use this kind of information to quantify the product complexity. So car makers the product delivery destinations comprise 11 car manufacturers from Toyota, Nissan, and Honda to including the car makers, including truck makers. So these are the supply. We have the data in 1988 and 2016. So all the number of auto parts are about 200 in 1988 and about 275 parts in 2016. All these kind of products are classified to conventional categories from one, engine body parts, electrical parts, hybrid vehicle, electrical vehicle, fuel cell vehicle parts, driving parts, suspension and brake, and body parts. So in 1988, we cannot find any hybrid vehicle and electrical and fuel cell vehicle parts. So from this data, we can find three styles, very important three styles facts. Fact one, the figure shows suppliers portfolio. That means how many products are produced by each suppliers. Denso producing the 73 kinds of products. Denso has the largest portfolio. So the suppliers that produce, most of suppliers that produce a few products account for 75%. So only 7% of suppliers produce more than 10 kinds of products. So we can imagine that the suppliers who achieve to accumulate the capability is a very few. And the most of the suppliers have only the capability, only the general capabilities, and specialize to one very few products. The fact two, this figure shows that, in this figure, the plotted points correspond to each auto parts. For example, these auto parts are produced by 25 auto car makers, many auto car makers. And suppliers that produce these products has a few product portfolio. These suppliers can only produce a few products. In other words, and in other hand, these products are produced by only one suppliers, and these products are produced by suppliers with many portfolios. That is, factor two is that their products, this kind of products, delivered by a small number of suppliers, tend to be produced by diversified suppliers. In other hand, ubiquitous products delivered by a large number of suppliers tend to be produced by specialized suppliers. So we can imagine that these products that are produced by suppliers with many capabilities are very sophisticated products. In other words, this kind of products that are produced by suppliers using the very general products are very less sophisticated. The factor three. Suppliers' product portfolio can be translated into this network representation, where links indicate that a supplier, for example, S1 can produce auto parts P1, P2, and P3, and S2 can produce P2, P1, and P2. S3, supplier S3 can only produce P1. So this bipartite supplier product network is summarized into binary supplier product matrix. The representation is different, but the meaning is totally the same. So S1 can produce P1, P2, and P3. S2 can produce P1 and P2. S3 can produce P1. So if a vertical view in column, products arranged by the number of suppliers delivering each product, then the columns show the ubiquity or uniqueness. Suppliers in rows according to the number of different products each delivers means that the diversity of suppliers. So this is an illustrative example of the when we construct the binary supplier order path networks or matrix based on our real data, we can find a substantially triangular matrix which characterizes as nestedness. So the suppliers located at the top, that is denso, can produce 73 kinds of the products. Denso can make the many products. In other hand, the suppliers at the bottom can only a few products, and that product are produced by many suppliers. So we can imagine that this kind of products at the left-hand side are very ubiquitous products and using very general capabilities. In other hand, the products at the right-hand side produced by only a few products, and these products are not are produced by only suppliers with diversified portfolios. So these products are evaluated as very sophisticated products. So this is a basic thinking about how to derive complexity index. So based on this stylized facts, we derive the product complexity. So by applying network techniques, Hidalgo and Hausman developed the empirical methods that are theoretically grounded in economic complexity. Although it is difficult to derive, difficult to infer genetic capability exhaustively, the Hidalgo and Hausman method indirectly captures capabilities based on agnostic view. Complexity indices are constructed by combining information of suppliers' product diversification and ubiquity of delivered products. So as I explained, capability-rich suppliers have more diversified product compositions than suppliers with fewer capabilities. And products that are required general capabilities will be made in many suppliers. So this is the supplier. This figure shows the supplier-product relationships. We know the relationship between suppliers and auto parts. From this information, how can we infer hidden capabilities embedded in auto parts? So this is how to this is how the problem is how to extract hidden these capabilities necessary for producing specific products from available data. So this figure shows a brief method to infer product complexity. So as the index of product sophistication, the product complexity index is computed using the information on the diversification of suppliers and on the ubiquity of products. So first step, diversification. It's how many products are produced by suppliers. Of course, the suppliers with much portfolio is evaluated as sophisticated suppliers. Ubiquity, how many suppliers produce product P. So products that are produced by many suppliers are less sophisticated products. So the second step, we incorporate ubiquity information into diversification. That is, how diversified are the suppliers that produce ubiquitous products. Then we introduce diversity into ubiquity. So how ubiquitous are the products produced by diversified suppliers? After that, after stage, it is difficult to explain by words, but method of reflection continue to measure this, make reflections up to the number of complexity become converge. So the information of diversification and the ubiquity is more and more refined at the increasing order. This is a very brief method how to evaluate, how to derive complexity index. So this is the results. The figure shows the top 20 products in terms of product complexity index. In 1988, the parts evaluated as sophisticated are mainly engine body parts, red-colored engine body parts. That are mainly the parts used for internal combustion engine. The sophisticated parts are also electrical parts. In 2016, the parts evaluated as sophisticated are totally changed. The most sophisticated products are hybrid vehicle parts and fuel cell vehicle parts. And we can find only a few engine body parts as sophisticated. So we can still find blue-colored electrical parts, but the other parts listed here is totally different from the electrical parts in 1988. So sophisticated parts, all parts evaluated as sophisticated are totally changed over the 30 years. And okay, interestingly, these, especially in 2016, the old parts evaluated as sophisticated are mainly produced by Toyota's credit suppliers. So this is very interesting findings. This is the bottom 20 products in terms of product complexity index. In 1988, less sophisticated auto parts are mainly engine body parts and body parts. And also in 2016, the less sophisticated are engine body parts and body parts. The auto parts evaluated as less sophisticated are not so much changed. So that is a characteristic of the product complexity about the less sophisticated product.
Professor, when you are calculating sophisticated,
When you're calculating sophistication,
Yes.
you are using the data set for that particular year, right? So
Particularly,
90
yes, yes.
98 and 2016.
By which year?
So is it the case that sometimes the sophistication of a part, let us say, flywheel might be sophisticated in 1998, but it has becomes less sophisticated in 2016?
Yes, yes. Even same auto parts.
Same for the parts
Yeah,
country.
yeah. One part evaluated as sophisticated, but in 2016, that may be less sophisticated. So, for example, these engine body parts are still manufactured also in 2016, but we cannot find top 20 sophisticated products. So the rank of these products are now drop down. So we can.
Is there a case that firms are operating at two levels? At one level, they are targeting, product qualities and differentiating their products through cutting edge technology. And then those technologies at some point get mainstream. And then you're targeting cost minimization. So you have some specific suppliers for the cutting edge technology, which you're in some senses safeguarding and, differentiating the product too. And then they get mainstreamed, and over time, they end up as the non-critical parts being manufactured more widely. Is that a conclusion to draw?
Yeah. You mean
It's like flying geese theory, but
from
which are essentially in the product space rather than in the across different firms. So
So what I'm saying is that there's a firm manufacturing a vehicle today, and then it's some critical aspects of the vehicle, so R&D they are improving and trying to differentiate their products from other manufacturers. So then those cutting edge technologies that they bring in, they are then related to some specific suppliers who are producing a large number of components, but each specialized for a particular need. And then that technology over time will get mainstream, others will catch up, and it'll be that particular component might get more broadly manufactured over time. Then it's serious to be at the top, but over time moves down. And then a new area of intervention comes in for the cutting edge, innovations.
yes, yes.
These are some new set of items at the top. Another 10 years down the road, they move down on the spectrum. So whether there is a kind of life cycle with technology that,
Yes, yes.
you ask me a question.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know whether my answer is correct or not, but in 2016, some suppliers belong to the automobile industry, for example, electronic industries, participate into the 2016, and these are the fuel cell vehicle parts are produced by not by conventional automobile industries, but produced by electronic parts. That is new participants into the production structure in the automobile industries. That is one of the reasons why the rankings of all the parts are
Thanks. Let me not interrupt you.
yeah. So econometric analysis. So we move to econometric analysis using this complexity index. So we try to test whether the asset specificity to develop products affects the organizational structure in the Japanese automobile industries. So if any, we try to identify whether or not there are significant differences between auto car makers, especially Toyota, Nissan, and Honda. So we estimate by logic model dependent organizational structure. So we like to estimate probability of auto part production for the following three scenarios. First scenario is production in-house. This is totally vertically integrated. Second scenario is production either in-house or through Keiretsu suppliers. There are some definition about Keiretsu suppliers, but now we define Keiretsu suppliers as auto part suppliers in which the parent auto car makers own their stock. Third scenario is production either in-house or through subsidiaries. So we define subsidiaries as auto parts suppliers in which the parent auto makers owns 20% or more of their stock. Independent variables. First, our focal independent variable is complexity. Complexity means degree of asset specificity, degree of asset specificity to develop a product. Other independent control variables are three. First is the centrality. Centrality is measured by product relatedness. We can say this variable as system or coordination effect variable. So if the auto parts are manufactured by similar technology or similar know-how, these kind of products are produced in tandem. So the similar products are potentially produced by a integrated organizational structure. So that is one of the reasons why we introduced the system variables. Second, independent is a measure of product clustering. This measure is economy of the scope effect. So if the multiple products used by common skills or technologies that are tend to be produced by integrated organizational system. Then we introduce conventional categories of parts damage. So we show very briefly the results of econometric analysis. First, we focus on the results about complexity variables. The estimates, many of estimates for 1988, complexity was not significant. And so the decisions, the complexity is not a significant factor in decisions related to organizational structure. But in 2016, for Toyota, complexity variables are significantly negative. So that means that Toyota are likely to ask complex products to other suppliers. But when incorporating catered suppliers, Toyota likely to ask complex products to catered suppliers and subsidiaries. So this results show that asset-specific complex products are produced by catered or the subsidiaries in the case of Toyota. However, for Nissan and Honda, complexity variables are negatively significant. That means Nissan and Honda ask the complex products to suppliers outside the catered system. So Nissan and we think Nissan and Honda likely to pursue the cost efficiency through market than Toyota. So very interesting thing that so we are thinking about why Nissan and Honda ask so complex product to outside the integrated system. So Nissan and Honda ask complex product to Toyota's catered suppliers. So Toyota's catered suppliers only transact with not only with Toyota, but also Nissan and Honda and the other car makers. So that is why Nissan and the coefficient of Nissan and Honda is significantly negative. So further, similarly, the segment or coordination variables are significantly positive, both in 1988 and 2016. But for in-house production, system variable effect become weaker, but catered production become stronger for Toyota. In recent period, Nissan and Honda, the centrality does not show much significant effect about system variable. So that is a very brief results of our econometric analysis. So finally, conclusion and discussion. So this study examines the relationship between asset specificity to develop products and organizational governance structure in the Japanese automobile industry. So we attempt to add empirical contribution to the transaction cost economic literature by qualifying asset specificity in an objective manner. We try to quantify asset specificity in an objective manner by applying network science approach. The concept of economic, we believe that the concept of economic complexity is suitable for expressing asset specificity to develop product. And discussion. Effect of asset specificity to develop products on the organizational design are different by auto car makers, especially between Toyotas and Honda Nissan. The probability of producing a complex auto part in-house is less likely for all car makers. But while Toyota does not produce complex parts by itself, it forms a relationship with other manufacturers that is controlling in nature and produces complex parts through the catered or subsidiaries. However, unlike Toyota, Nissan and Honda tend to produce complex components from non-affiliated suppliers, non-catered suppliers, especially from Toyota's catered suppliers. So complex products are often developed by Toyota's catered suppliers. Toyota's catered suppliers have Toyota's case suppliers have operational flexibility. The case suppliers allowed to transact not only with Toyota but also the other car makers. So these car makers deliver their products to other car makers. That's can those systems can able to for Toyota's Toyota's catered suppliers to collect the information about the demand environment from variety of car makers. So that is an advantage for Toyota's catered suppliers. And so Toyota that costs also the Toyota's benefits. So this is our thinking now. Why the organizational structure is totally different from the other car makers, including Nissan and Honda. Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kalkani, for a very interesting and illuminating presentation. Let me now request Dr. Rana Hassan, the discussant, to give us his comments, and then we open the floor for questions. Rana.
Thank you very much. Very much enjoyed the presentation, and I have 3 questions, and I'm sure once the discussion gets going, probably there'll be more. You know, first of all, I'm trying to understand the product complexity measure, is it that you're using the Hausmann Hidalgo product space
Yes.
directly?
Yes.
So that means that essentially you first have to map the parts to the HS codes, right at the 6-digit level.
Yes.
So that was a question I had, because I was getting confused about one thing, whether you were somehow using the fact that many suppliers make the same part as an input into the complexity. So I wasn't sure which one is it. Are you using the Hausmann, or are you using the fact that?
Yes, I use the relatedness measure to measure this centrality first. So we are system effect by using relatedness measures.
Right.
So the product which has many links to other products, which has many relatedness with other auto parts, has a very big system, very related to other variables. So these parts are incorporated into the larger system. So these parts are likely to be produced within integrated system organizational structure. So we introduce the Hidalgo's Hausmann relatedness measure for system or coordination effects. So complexity is a set of specificity, and relatedness are used for measuring system and system effects. That is, yeah.
So okay, so it's I can see the economies of scope effect. The other part which puzzles me is economies of scale. How important are economies of scale? So, for example, could it be that a supplier who only is producing one product, that's not so much that that's not a sophisticated product, it's just that you have enormous economies of scale in that. And how do you, so it would have been nice in your regressions to actually control for some measure of how important economies of scale are in the production of that. And also, I was wondering if you had information on, let's say, R&D by the different suppliers, patents being taken out by the different suppliers, and that would be very useful to cross-check, the complexity measure that you're getting from the Hidalgo.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Because I would think that one would think that the more patents or the more R&D spending. Now, of course, the problem is that you will have R&D data. You will not know it's R&D for this part or that part. So for Denso, this would not work. If Denso is making all 73, then it's a problem. But patents there might be it would be specific maybe to a type of auto part.
Yeah.
So those were a couple of issues. Then wipers. I was puzzled by seeing wipers in your list of top 20, and I couldn't understand why is a wiper.
Wiper.
Yes. Why are wipers? If you look in 1988, a wiper is in the top 20 products
Yes.
by PCI, but
It's doubtful.
yeah, that seems to be really not a very high-tech product. Whereas your other things I can see, like especially for 2016, it's very clear that you've got all these
Yes.
battery cooling systems are very sophisticated. We know even all these cell phones and all this, they spend a lot actually on that. So that list was making sense, but the wiper was a little puzzling.
Yes. Yes.
On that one. Then just so now another question I had was you were saying Nissan in your chart, Nissan and Mazda really saw a decline.
Yes. Yes.
But later in your analysis, you were talking about Nissan and Honda. But even if we look at whichever it is, these companies which are having less reliance on their own in-house or their own Keiretsu companies. Is it something about the legal system that's changing in Japan over this period? Because if we go back to the theory you started with, right, about transaction costs, when transaction costs are high, dealing with arm's length people, you try to build everything internally. Now, is it the case that in Japan, there's something about the broader legal system which is making it easier to go for arm's length transactions? Legal system that, if the legal system doesn't work well, then I can see you want to build everything yourself, because you cannot punish a contractor who doesn't provide on time or by the specific quality.
Opportunistic.
Yeah. So what is there something in the broader business environment, legal environment in Japan that's changing from 1988 to 2000s?
Even for protecting proprietary technology, there's some proprietary technology, then you have to trust your vendor to
All right.
save them.
So that might be very interesting to look at. What's driving this?
Is the third line, Honda line, third thing the top?
Honda.
That's the Honda line.
This one. This
Third one, this is Honda.
It's
Flat, going up and it's on.
Nissan and Mazda.
So Honda is intermediate case between Toyota and.
Yes. Yes. Relatively
I was
stable.
just wondering again as a layperson, is there a distinction between their sort of market strategies? Toyota strategizing high quality, high-end product, where Nissan is strategizing on price, and Honda is somewhere in between. Because Honda is also renowned for quality. But at some level, they're targeting price more than Toyota. And is there any systematic difference in the price bands in which all three operate? Nissan a lower price band, Honda somewhere here, and then Toyota on top. Is there
You have touched upon a very interesting point here, because what is happening in case of Honda? They started internationalizing much earlier than other two. For Toyota, the largest market is domestic.
right?
But in case of Honda, like they started internationalizing in North American and European market fairly early. So their they started dismantling the system of Keiretsu earlier. So they started procuring locally because it was far more cost effective for them to develop that local industry rather than trying to do everything at home and then ship the goods there. So I guess that was one of the key points there.
Yes.
And the other thing to see is, this buying from the Toyota Keiretsu, does it happen with the lab? That, Toyota works on the cutting edge technologies, develops vendors, and then with the lab,
Yes.
other manufacturers are adopting those components, and is there a time lag? So Toyota, in a sense, reaps the advantage and then moves on to other, hyper areas, and others follow with the lab. I think it is that.
Yeah.
So,
Here, interesting thing is Denso. Denso is basically, it started off as a Toyota's department, which then became subsidiary. Then it became so large to the extent that it became important for them also to grow. And then Denso started supplying parts to others as well. So they had specialized over a period of time.
so that brings you to run issue
Yes.
scale.
Yes, that's right.
Manufacturer producing large number of components in small quantities, how do they scale and why the scale? So that might explain how they diversify into supplying to others also,
That's right.
and maybe eventually achieve scale also. That's right. So Rana, go.
No, these actually were my three main questions. So, thank you.
Should we open up the floor for
Yes, if there's anyone from the online audience who wants to ask something, they could unmute and ask. But while they are doing that, could I quickly ask also about when you have right now, for example, recently, so two questions. One, among these three firms, which would you say is the leader in electric vehicle technology? Would it be Toyota, Honda, or Nissan in terms of the firm which is doing, or are they all at the same level? One. The second is recently there was all this issues with respect to semiconductor part supplies and so on and so forth. So when you have other firms like Honda and Nissan who are buying from a Toyota owned supplier or a Toyota Keiretsu supplier, partly owned by Toyota, is there any concern that they might prioritize supplies to Toyota more than supplies to, if there is a shortage, Toyota will get the part, but Honda and Nissan will not? In terms of understanding, is there any issue in that scale?
Yeah, I cannot say whether there are any prioritization. Of course, Toyota Keiretsu in Toyota Keiretsu suppliers, board members comes from Toyota. So I think, of course, that Toyota's that transaction with Toyota is most important for Toyota Keiretsu suppliers. Yeah, especially, yeah. So, but yeah, but very general engine body parts. So, for example, Denso has big product portfolio. So Denso produce very sophisticated products to less sophisticated, very general products. So about less sophisticated products, that are no problem to deliver to other car makers from Denso. So that is okay. But the sophisticated products, especially for example, for fuel cell vehicles, it is I think especially Toyota's delivery is the most important. So yeah, that is my thinking. Yeah. Oh, what's the question?
Yeah, and the first question was on electric
Electric
vehicles.
vehicles.
So, like, my understanding is that in Japan, none of the manufacturers are too much keen on the electric vehicles. They are more on the hybrid vehicle side. So maybe Shetsu can elaborate on that, like and electric vehicles are far more less complex than.
No, but which is the leader of the three? Who is the leader in hybrid vehicles? The logically one would feel that Toyota would be the leader, with Honda following close behind and Nissan further behind. I don't know, my intuitive sense.
Prius, I guess, is the original. Should be Toyota.
Yeah.
Luis or Yaris in Europe.
No, hybrid vehicle is leader of hybrid is the fuel cell and also led by Toyota.
So in some senses that supports this quality oblique price focus thesis. That Toyota is being driven into the cutting edge. And others are tending to follow, be a step behind.
It was interesting. Also, we have Mr. Ikichi from the embassy in Japan. So, yeah. So,
from the Ministry of Ministry of Economy Trade Industry and Trade. Also, maybe is so and yeah, this discussion was very interesting. Regarding the electric vehicle, yeah, today's as you know, is trying to start the hybrid trying do not starting is trying to start make us EV, but I think that and I heard that regarding the range of the distance of the vehicle is key, and the usage is very limited in that point. So that's why, and I think so in India, and they also do not starting the making the EV. Toyota is not starting making EV, so they are trying to use the biofuel and hybrid other their product, and Suzuki started to make a hybrid EV, but I think that there are strong political next. So and I heard regarding EV, the battery is very heavy and it is going to make it very difficult to support the heavy weight to make a four-wheeler vehicle. So they are struggling to design the four-wheeler vehicle. But I think that in India, I think the in this analysis the components for the electric vehicle is easy to make. Yeah, as everyone know, so I think it is. I think we. But I think it is so I think regarding the supplier of the EV, and we can get some hint. I thought that we can get some hint from this analysis. We might get the hint from this analysis. That's what I thought.
thank you. One follow up on one issue that Anup, you raised. If it is the case that Toyota is the technological leader in some sense, it is also the firm which is using the suppliers more intensively. We think of leaders as being developing technologies in-house, etc., but this is actually where the firm which is the largest ecosystem which is actually doing the technology development. Maybe because specialized firms are better able to have a symbiotic relationship and understanding their own specific technologies better and therefore make improvements. So two questions, one question and one observation. One is, why do you think this is the case that Toyota, which is the one which is using more, do you think there's a relationship between technological frontier and that performance? And secondly, in the context of the PLI systems, it seems that it's important not only for the primary producer, but for this ecosystem of component manufacturers, because a lot of the innovation might actually be in the component space. So we must therefore sort of look at, make sure that our PLIs are designed so that this kind of component story can also come through. That's the other issue. But sorry.
So why Toyota's maintain the, okay. Based on our result of econometrics, Toyota pursue the technological aspect, leading technological frontier, become more and more important. That is one reason why Toyota maintains the relationship with the car suppliers. But the Toyota's just-in-time system is one of the reasons for integration, vertical integration, and integrated organization. But the effect of efficient aspect become weaker. So that is the effect of the technological aspect become larger, but effect of just-in-time efficiency, pursuing efficiency, becoming lower and lower, and that is which effect is important comes results of Toyota's ratio from the catered suppliers. So nowadays, the technological aspect bigger than the pursuing efficiency aspect. So that is the reason why the Toyota maintain the catered suppliers. So
can you speculate on where the
population
for the electric automobile industry that is more electric vehicle? Can you, on your basis of your result, can you speculate as to where, what kind of industry it will be? Will it be more suppliers, more in-house?
If movement to electrical going forward, basically, as you said, electrical parts are very simple, and maybe there are the specific relationship with the supplier is not so become important. But if the fuel cell vehicle parts need more sophisticated technologies. So then the FCB diffused in the market. So Toyota likely to maintain the credit. So that depends on the market situation and the government policies. So yeah. Yeah, it is difficult to say whether Toyota, as a speculation, Toyota can maintain this kind of relationship with close relationship. So that depends on the evaluation or policy, whether the Japanese government push to electric vehicle or not.
I think electric vehicle, the scope is somewhat, the sort of very specialized cutting edge products are limited as compared to the regular vehicle. I think battery technology, one has to see whether that is where the differentiation will happen across companies, and that is what the leading companies will target. Better battery technology, better battery life, quicker charging or whatever. So regarding PLI, you see, that is a major concern, that you can't have PLI and then have very low value addition in perpetuity. Electronics, we are now exporting $2-3 billion worth of cell phones, but then the value addition is just 4-5%. Most of the components are imported. So how do you graduate? And the suggestions that time when it was being conceived included, of course, outright mandating some value addition. But then that would have been violated of WTO rule. You can't mandate the value addition beyond 50-odd%. And in this component-based industry, that is not adequate value addition in terms of getting meaningful production onshore. And the other device was to have some investment norms. Over time, the manufacturer has a certain investment requirements. So automatically, either directly or through ancillaries, when you have an investment norm, then automatically they'll be forced to produce components, including in India. So those two aspects were there. So let's see how they are implemented and enforced over time, and 5-6 years down the road, what our experience with value addition transformation in those 13 sectors is. So that way to be seen. But to the extent some fine tuning is required, the fine tuning that we done in the US to ensure that 5-6-7 years down the road, you have meaningful value addition across those 13 sectors in India. So these are my thoughts on that. So again, any further observations, questions, anything?
I had I should have started my discussion remarks by mentioning that it is a very interesting paper. And the way you structured this, you've taken up an issue in structural transformation. And while there are many papers that look at the product space issues from a macro perspective, this is the first time I've seen a very micro exercise. And like you mentioned in the paper, you've picked up the automobile sector, which is so important to the process of structural transformation. And then you really went into the detailed impact. So it's really a very unique paper with a very unique data set. And you also then brought in the econometric analysis to show us some stylized facts. And just, one final point is what's interesting to see is how much heterogeneity there is. Just, in terms of these different companies and different strategies that they use. So very much enjoyed. Yes. Thank you.
As suggested, when we view the macro level productive space, the structure is stable, relatively stable. But within industries,
Right.
yes, productive structure is dramatically changing. So if we make any policy, that especially the industrial policy and or related cluster region policies, So this kind of analysis is very important and change. The focusing on the change of productive space is very important. So that is one of the main message.
Right.
of our research.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think we can conclude this session. Let me conclude by thanking Professor Kawakami for a wonderful presentation. I personally enjoyed it very much, and the rigor of academic analysis into an important subject was very fascinating for me as a non-academic layperson. Let me also congratulate his co-authors, Professor Tiwari, Dr. and Professor Yamada, for the wonderful contribution to this subject at a micro and industry level. And let me thank our very learned discussant, Dr. Rana Hassan, for his very valuable comments. Let me thank Partha and CPR for making this possible. And let me thank Partha and all other participants for contributing in a very valuable manner to this discussion. So my sincere thanks to everyone and all the participants offline who are unknown right now, who might have participated and listened to the discussion. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.